Sassoon Now is the third of a triptych of collections. The first looked at our legacy, the second our association with the Bauhaus, and Sassoon Now looks at the brand today. Sassoon 65 was a collection that celebrated the legacy of our brand and the work and the methodology that has made it world famous. Here, the beautiful 5-point shape by Vidal, and next to that a look that echoes the same balance, together with this wonderful quote from Vidal that hair is architecture with a human element. And here is the collection that we produced for our salons and academies to celebrate our 65th anniversary. 2020.2 looked at the Sassoon legacy from a design perspective and very much explored the relationship of the philosophy of Sassoon and the Bauhaus. Here you can see the direct correlation between the work of Bauhaus master Joseph Albers, a technical diagram, and on the right the resulting image. And this series of images is the collection that celebrated the design and architectural legacy. So that brings us to today, and the collection entitled Sassoon Now. And when one thinks about the Sassoon company now, it's obvious that our heritage is very much perpetuated by the creative team. They are cool hunters in every sense of the word, always looking for new ways to express their creativity through cut and colour and its endless combinations. And here is the product of those creative hearts and minds, the work that is a true collaboration between the artist and the muse. The collection has been divided into 3 sections, and here we start with arguably the most recognisable look from Sassoon, the bob, something that we always include in our collections. This season we've been inspired by the mouche cut by Christopher Brooker in 1972, Dark Lady cut by Darrell Benson in 1974, and the straight shake cut by Pat Lewis in 1977. Here are the technical diagrams that help us deliver the collection to our teams and through our courses at the Academy and online. Our colour team are using the influence of the classic 2-tone colour technique to guide their hands for this collection. Here you can see how the 2-tone technique is utilised in modern ways with different geometric shapes to build up layers of colour. The second theme of the collection is concerned with layering at a mid and long length. We've used reverse layering and been inspired by the wash and wear period of Sassoon, which started in the mid-70s with the shake and continued with BB that was cut in 1985. We were also inspired by different forms of undercutting. On the left here, a shape that is buzz cut, and the classic thatch on the right, cut by Christopher Brooker in 1976. Once again, you can see here technical diagrams that illustrate a more layered feeling with reverse layering and different forms of concealed layering. Notice here how the colouring has more of a partial quality with our new backbrush highlighting and barcoding techniques. The third and final part of the collection is something really new from Sassoon and involves utilising the model's natural hair and the addition of false hair in different tones. This was experimented with back in 1984 with this look Ionic, coloured by iconic colourist Annie Humphreys. Another experiment with false hair and the model's natural hair was undertaken here with the collaboration with the fashion designer Yuki. And here finally you can see how we create layout designs for our team so they can recreate these looks. And this is the collection, the first of 2 that will celebrate the Sassoon brand today. Don't forget you can still book to join our hands-on classes tomorrow at 10 AM, 2 PM or 6 PM to work with the creative team in an up-close format. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the presentation. So thank you to the colour team for their beautiful interpretation of shape and balance. And we're now going to move on with cutting sections, where you will hear not only about the techniques, but also the inspiration behind them. So please welcome the international creative team. Okay, hi everyone. So this is Annabelle, and on Annabelle's hair, Janice has coloured the hair first. So we've got this beautiful tonal quality around the front, and then what we're calling backbrushed highlights throughout the rest of the hair. Very inspired by sort of mid to late 60s, in particular the work of Antonioni's film Blow Up and Jane Birkin's role in that. Jane Birkin was a British actress who had a 10-year relationship with the French singer Serge Gainsbourg. So that's the inspiration, and she always used to wear this very carefree layered hair that had a lovely face-framing feel around the front with layers all the way through. So that's the kind of jumping off point for the look.
So welcome everyone. So I'd like to introduce you to Anna, lovely model today, and we're going to be really working on sort of a new concept with the lines today for Anna. So I've worked on the line through the perimeter of the back. They're like a really classic square line. And then we're going to really work with the face structure, bone structure around the face with the lines. One line sort of just coming just onto the cheekbone through the front there, and then another line coming sort of onto the jaw. So it's really about working with geometry on lines with longer hair.
Okay, so first section is a little triangle around the hairline. Lift the hair out. It's only a small section, so I can do that in a oneer. Lift the hair out forward, keeping my fingers square. That's the key part. This is going to be reverse layered, the front area. So literally working square, so the fringe gets very slightly longer into the corners, using the curve of the forehead to make the angle for me. So keeping things very kind of simple in terms of the technique. I think now my work is very much based around the idea of using classic technique in kind of modern ways, using them in combination to create something for the individual. You know, obviously at the moment the whole idea of individuality, of liberation is very much part of the fashion lexicon, and I think hair should follow that. You know, hair should have that sense of freedom, that sense of liberation, and that sense of individuality. And I think here, from a technical standpoint, in order to create that individuality, I think it's very important to use a little bit of technique, you know, a little bit of thought on how you can make the hair move in interesting ways for the wearer. And I think reverse layering, disconnection, all of those kind of techniques where you're separating the hair from each other technically, but connecting it visually, all make the hair move in a kind of cool, interesting way. So here you can see the fringe sits just above the brow, and then I've just taken the corner out of the top of that, and notice how, because of the squareness of the line, how the length develops just down into the temple. So the first section's like a little V, and the section immediately behind that will be about 2 fingers width, and will just be slightly longer than the one previous. And it will sit just on the round of the cheekbone.
Okay. So very similar to Mark Williams. So I'm starting through the front area. I mean, I've already pre-blow dried Anna's hair, and I'm going for the fringe. I suppose a bit more sort of like looking for it to sort of skim the eyes, that sort of length really for her. So, and at the moment I'm keeping everything into the same line. I'm not elevating at all. So just want it to sort of look quite strong, quite graphic through the fringe there. And I'm also cutting it, as Mark was saying, I'm cutting quite square, so that way it will fall with a little bit of length towards the cheekbone there. So because I am working on dry hair, I'm just using slightly less tension and cutting the line square. I think if I cut it this length as well, it affords me the opportunity a little bit later on then to come in and slightly diffuse that line.
Okay, so the second section you can see here just encompasses the hair that sits slightly further down, further back on the top, and comes back out to the hairline through the sides, through the temples. So we're starting to work into the hair that will fall onto the cheekbone. So I just want to accurately sit the hair onto that. So once again, treating the hair individually, so not connecting it technically, lifting the hair out so my fingers are at the same level as the top of the head. Doesn't matter if the hair disconnects through the fringe. That will just help to frame the face in a kind of interesting, cool way. One of the key parts is to keep the hair in the sides, this area here that I'm working on now, keep that lifted and keep your fingers square, if you can see that. Keep your fingers square, because then the hair will just, again, using the curve of the head, will just make the angle for you. So you can just cut a square line, and obviously that hair then will trail down kind of nicely. So that fringe will just kind of kick around the underneath length and then through the sides.
So I'm moving on to the line, just coming onto the jawline then. So just aiming for a length that I suppose just bisects the sort of bottom of the ear to the jawline then, and then trying to keep the angle. I think Mark was just alluding to that really, so something that's sort of complementary to the bone structure. So I think if you've got your first line just really sort of is complementary to the cheekbone, and then your second line really is really focusing on a complementary angle to the jawline there. The way I've worked, I'm cutting, sort of with the bone structure, but I'm actually taking the sections more curved. So I feel that way it will help me to sort of open up the shape around the face rather than working up with, sort of classically horizontal sections. So curving back, and that will just let the hair as well from the top just fall over. So I have the little shape underneath and then the disconnection on top. I can visually just see how much I want to go in there. I think I'll go back, I think I'll go up higher, one more section there. So it just curves from the front hairline to the back of the ear. Again, I'm not using any elevation at the moment, I'm just keeping the length, or keeping the sort of the weight of the line onto the previous section.
So here the section you can see now changes shape. So this hair will eventually fall down onto the side of Annabelle's face, and this hair will kind of sit into the shoulders. So what I want to do is to bring this into the layering, so it will kind of just provide a little bit of shape in this area here. So still the same technique though, still lifting the hair forward and blending at a longer length than the hair underneath. So again, coming through and keeping my fingers square. And to be honest, the hair at the side will probably be cut when I take the corner out of the hair. It'll join a little bit with the angle in the side. Just incline the head over. And as I'm working down into this hair, I won't be over-directing the hair up so much. Otherwise, it tends to leave too much weight. It's a balance. It's a balance between leaving enough hair to create the dimension of the shape, but not too much that the hair collapses. That's the idea. So you can see here, you've got that line that runs down. And then what I'll do, to take the corner out of the hair, I'll actually lift this up around this way now, actually. Lift this hair up. Work from the temple, so from this point. I know that I've got enough length underneath because this section doesn't connect with anything that I've done previously. So I know that I'm not affecting anything that's framing the face. And I can just take the corner out from here. Cutting the hair square, then I'll bring Annabelle's head slightly over to me. Gently round the corner. And then come down into the hair that sits on the sides. And again, I won't search for the hair. You know, it's going to fit to the pattern that I'm putting into the hair. I'm not going to kind of try and find hair that isn't at the right length. Because this is the first section in the side, so you don't really want to be taking too much weight out of that. Because the hair, the idea of this haircut is that a lot of hair frames the face in a super cool way. The layering is more on the internal shape. It should have a feeling of a lot of hair, you know, kind of around the face, in the eyes, that kind of very late 60s, early 70s layered idea. And then the texture of Annabelle's hair is super nice. It's just got that very lazy sort of curl to it. So I stopped, I've cut 3 sections around the front and into the sides. And then the hair that sits on the top, I'm just going to divide that away for now. So keep that hair out of the way. And I've just divided like a triangular section in the back that sits just below the highest point of the head. So it's just as the head rounds towards the top, which is kind of just about the center of the ears. So I'm going to layer that hair out, maintain the length on the edge. I love the idea, again, you can see the texture, slightly see the texture, this lovely kind of lazy, corkscrewy sort of curl. Layer the hair from the center and then pivot out so we just keep the length around the outline. I'm not going to put an edge into the hair because I kind of like the idea that the edge, recycle the edge that I put in last time, but also I like the idea of it being quite sort of skinny on the outline, like not too hard a line. So I'm just going to allow the hair below the occipital bone, so anything below the occipital to drop away. And then the angle really depends on you. I'm not going to make it too ultra crazy. Just lifting the hair up. And just as I work through, just making sure that I lift, so I'm not creating a corner on the top. So keep the hair lifted. Keep the tension on the hair, don't do that. Keep the hair held out nicely so it looks professional. And then pivot from that center parting, so everything comes back into the middle. So it means that if the hair was really long, you can pivot that section around and just drop the edge away.
So if I just revisit the layering underneath, then so I can just show you the lengths that I've created with the disconnection. So you've got the shorter panel there that I was working with, and then working that sort of concave angle, and then above that, I didn't want to overly layer the top area, so I wanted it to still look predominantly one length, but just obviously it's been a long while since the last haircut and the colour in there as well, so I just went through and brought up sort of everything up square there, so I don't take too much of the weight away, and then over-directed all of those sections up into that point. So I'm not trying to create sort of something that's too layered through that top section, but just really clean off all of the the previous haircut, so it still falls over, that veil of length falls onto the outline. Once I've finished that, I can then just come back over and have a look at how that's all sitting now.
So just a little bit of halo hydrate, which is our kind of moisturizer for hair. And what's important is to work the hair through work the product through the hair in sections.
I think on Anna's as well, because I've cut the hair dry and it was quite a large restyle through there, so I've just damped it slightly down just so I can just bring back a little bit of the natural bend to the hair. So just very slightly damped it down with water, a little bit of heat shake, and then just a little bit of a wrap dry on there just to finish it off.
So I think other things that are in the collection, we've, yes, you're seeing a lot of layered hair here with Damien and I, but there's also working with little square, the bob, which I suppose in a sense is the signature Sassoon look and something that we always feature in our collections. It's like the sort of le smoking of Yves Saint Laurent, the way they always feature that in their collections. The bob is always something that we like to redo and reintroduce. So the bob is very much part of the collection too. And then also super long hair with layered panels. You're going to see that a little bit later on as well. Really long extremes of hair, which we think is very current too. Whether it's real hair or false hair used in combination with real hair, experimenting with that too. So there's still lots of experimentation going on at Sassoon. We have a very definite look, but that means that we can experiment and play with it and do different things to always create something interesting. So the hair's moisturized now. And you can see how much the texture comes back into the hair and how the different lengths, you can see them at the moment around the face because obviously that's the shortest point, but they will blend together. We'll use a little bit of curl form, which I think is so nice. Gives the hair a lot more what's the word? A lot more guts, kind of. It really makes the hair feel not just fuller, but thicker too. Super nice product. I mean, the drying process itself is really simple. So the preparation, therefore, is absolutely key. So I'm not sort of scrunching the hair. I don't want it to be like a sort of hairdo. I want it to just kind of dry as if in the spirit of the inspiration, as if she was sat in the back of a 1960s Triumph Spitfire going along the King's Road with David Hemmings at the wheel of the car. So from a technical perspective then, we've got a reverse layered front, 3 sections, 1, 2, 3, that sit in the framing of the face. That's where you get the shape around the face. And then layering through the back, which gives the profile shape, and then leaving the edge out. And then the final panel through the top is layered at a fractionally longer length, so you're covering the layering up underneath, but keeping the fullness in the shape as well. And then just very, very naturally dried with various sort of products to give the texture in the hair. And there you go.
As we said, really, so really just taking sort of another look at the lines in the technique, and most importantly, really, where you're placing the line. So, technically, we've got the line sort of just below the shoulder, square through the back. Then we've got a line that just sort of skims the bridge of the nose, going through to the cheekbone, and then a little length through the side, just below the ear there again, just really complementing the jawline. And then, really, I suppose just to create the movement and make the shape, up more modern, is working with the disconnection sort of through from the crown to the outline in the back, so working on a concave layer there, and keeping predominantly the rest of the hair one length, so it all sort of sits over like a sort of a softer veil over the whole shape. So you get something very strong and very graphic on the edges, but still has that movement and texture internally. I think it really complements the colour that you know, Edward worked on earlier as well. So you've got the sort of the stronger colour through the sort of the top band of the hair, and it's more of a solid colour through the edges. Thank you.
Okay, so here we have Anna's finished look, working through the underneath sections, as you've seen, with a barcoding technique. So literally working through back-to-back sections, 3 to 4 sort of foils in there, pre-lightened with white up and 6%. And I've worked that on both sides, but I worked it slightly unevenly. I'm not trying to make it all sort of particularly even all the way through. Once I'd applied the underneath sections, I then moved through the top, and working on an angle just went with a very classic highlighting technique, just to sort of blend everything through from there. Pre-lightened up the whole thing with white up and 6%, all those sections from there. And then Anna had some old sort of red colours on her hair, so I tinted in between, went with a mixture of Sassoon. I had 40 grams of level 4 with 60 grams of 5-stroke 8, so you left light brown grey from there. And then literally toned the bleach sections later on with 20 grams of 8-6, 20 grams of clear, and 20 grams of 9-1 from that. So you just get this sort of softer golden tone working through. But I'm really pleased with that. I quite like the way that you get that sort of more colour on the underneath, but still sort of have a little bit coming through.
Annabelle's technique, through the front area, back-to-back slices using bleach and 6%. The section I have that you can see here, using a level 7. So my colour touch 7-1 with 7-0 and 1.9. The lighter of the colour using 10-0, 901 and a little bit of 7-1, 1.9, and then I've gone back to the same formula that I've just mentioned, which was the 7 and 7-1 and 1.9 on the hairline. Through the back, I used the 7 and 7-1 on my root area, and then through the mid-length and ends, the same formula that I used on the lighter part of the back-to-back sectioning, which you can see on Annabelle just there. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Welcome to this section of the collection launch. So this is Ada, and on Ada's hair today we're going to be channeling a very early Angelina Jolie. So something that is really working with the absolute length that we have in Ada's hair today, because I think it just works so well on her. And I think that length around the shoulder as well gives a really interesting texture, the way that the hair hits and kicks off of the shoulders. So really like the idea of utilizing the longest lengths that are in the hair. And it's also a slight departure away from the bob shape that she last had. And I think the key to the look today that we're going to be presenting is an unstructured shape that's going to be cut around the face to kind of provide texture and detail, working with 3 significant lengths running in parallel form with each other. So that's my idea. I'll pass you over to James.
Okay, so hello everyone. So this is Emily, and you know, we've just got back from a nice beautiful colour with pink, nice vibrant colour, and what we want to do is something that's going to show references to Debbie Harry, and I wanted to have something that's going to be quite strong within the mid-length shape, but have a little bit of a looseness internally and keeping some of the weight through to the edges. And what I've done technically is that we want to kind of have that kind of layered undercut feeling to it that's going to have a slightly overlapping within the surface area as well. Now with the collection as well, you know, we looked at, you know, using different areas of the head shape to pivot from, and then how we can kind of incorporate it. So whether we're pivoting directly from the front hairline, the crown, or in my case today, I'm going to be pivoting from the occipital bone, we can get different kind of functionality to the haircut.
Cool, so with Ada's hair, to begin the technique, which I'm going to go straight into, I've divided the hair off into a small triangle that just sits parallel to the hairline. I'll just tilt Ada's head down there so you can see it. Okay, just a small triangle section. Trying to not really clip the hair too much as well, so just tucking the excess hair behind the ears at this point in the look, so I can have access to the longer hair that's going to sit next to this area. And I'm going to layer the hair to a length that's going to sit just below the eyebrows in an unstructured fashion. So I think a technique that works really, really well to achieve this result is if you just cut a line into the hair that runs parallel to the head shape. So it kind of has a slight graduation to the edge of the line. And then I'm going to be pivoting each of the sections into the center. So the fringe area just has this really nice rounded shape to it. And in a way, this will form the first area that the hair has no technical connection with the rest of the shape. It's just lifting the hair out, over-directing back onto the previous, and drawing the hair up into the center section.
I just want to mention about the sectioning within my haircut, because this is where I'm starting to initially pivot from. So at the moment, what you can see is that I've cut my exterior outline shape, and then I lifted that area up to kind of create this kind of looseness within that shape, take the weight away. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working from the occipital bone right the way through to the front hairline. And the idea is that this layer will overlap the layer that I've created underneath, so it's very close towards the actual outline. And then when I follow it through to the front hairline, which we will see in a second, is that it will overlap another area that I'm going to cut underneath the fringe.
Okay, so I've got the first initial length in now. So just coming over the head from behind, what I'll do is just, by bringing the hair forward, I think what I really like about working on hair that's dry at this stage is that you can go straight into organically refining the area that you've just worked on. So first of all, cutting down the length of the fringe very technically, using the club cutting technique, and now coming back through this area as I progress, and just refining and detailing the area. So I have the right feeling essentially on the hair before I move on. So just very much working with the natural reaction of the hair. And I think what that's going to do essentially is it's going to inform all of my decision making as I progress through the haircut. So just paying very close attention to how the hair's responding.
Can I just step in a sec? So you can see now where this section here, where I'm starting to pivot now, and then initially what this section will do is it will pivot from that occipital bone right the way through to the front hairline. And I'm just going to use over direction into the center. So the idea is that I have more of a layer in the surface, and I keep a lot of this strength in this area of the outline, so I can create a lot more texture and a looser feeling to the haircut for when I dress it out afterwards. Just following the curvature of the head and just maintaining more length at the very front as I progress to the front hairline.
Okay, Okay, so I've taken the second section. So if you think about these areas of the head shape that I'm dividing away, seeing them as almost major dividing sections in the technical aspect of the execution of how this haircut's going to be put together. So we've got a second section that sits parallel, and what you'll notice at this point, just lifting the hair out, you'll see that section there that's been worked on underneath. And now you're going to have a new length of hair that's going to be layered. And I was kind of, when we were discussing the haircut backstage, I thought it would be interesting to have a length that served the purpose of framing the cheekbone area. So kind of all of the, even though like the end result of this cut is going to be quite unstructured, very casual sentiment to the overall look, the technique is going to give me a certain dynamic in the shape where every element of it serves a purpose. So the initial area where the fringe is being cut kind of just broadens the face, frames the face in a really nice way and opens up the eye socket area. And then this second panel that I'm working on serves the purpose of defining the cheekbone area, but all done in a way that looks very effortless.
If you was going to look at references from some of the heritage looks, Daniel, what kind of references have you used as in your inspiration for your look today?
I think the 70s era at Sassoon's great for something like this.
Something very layered then, yeah?
'Cause it's all layered. And you know, obviously the shake haircut was a haircut that was round, layered and graduated from the front. So there's a much more shorter balance from the front. So I think definitely there's a link there to that. But in a way, this haircut that I'm doing is almost like a cross between the princess cut and the shake.
Yeah.
Because I do want that feeling that you do definitely have like a shorter area of interest that's been placed around the front of this cut and feels slightly separate to the length that we've got in the back. So keeping lots of hair and lots of energy in the back, but then you've got like this detail through the front. That's like my favorite thing about the princess cut, that it kind of allows both, you know, short and long hair to work together. But then, yeah, the textural quality of the shake haircut is definitely a key. What about for you, James?
For me, I would say the mousse has played a big interpretation for this haircut, kind of like following that curvature of the head.
Yeah.
And I would say the shake as well. So it's almost like merging the two references together.
Yeah.
Because I really want that kind of very laid around the face. And then obviously with a little bit of like hidden areas and panels just to kind of increase more movement and more texture into it. So
I think we're spoiled for references when you think about the Sassoon heritage.
yeah, definitely.
All of the work that's been done by the creative teams over the years. And then also, you know, the world of social media around us and Instagram and all the imagery that's available to us. It's quite interesting how you can kind of bring them together and get, you know, those different elements together and get, you know, such a wide variety of outcomes that would work in the context of the people that come to visit us.
So you can see now I'm actually holding a lot of hair, but the actual amount of hair that I will be cutting is just the section that I'm introducing. So because I'm using quite a lot of over direction, there's very little coming off the very edges now. I'll still check the hairline. You know, I'll still work my section right the way down and have that discipline to make sure that there's nothing overlapping my section. But you get the idea of that kind of length on the exterior and looseness internally.
So just placing the length in the side here So this is like the second stage of how I'm working with this side length. So obviously layering the hair through first, and then secondly just graduating a little outline in the side, but just not anything that's going to be too heavy. So lifting the hair right out, so it does, again, it falls with that kind of lived in attitude that we was talking about. So a length that can almost be fluffed up here around the front. And then what I'll do once I've achieved this is come through and just refine the interior.
Okay, so just going to explain this next stage of the haircut now. So I have this layered length that will work following the curvature of the head, building up some length into the front area. And now what I'm going to do is I want this kind of real hidden detail within the haircut. I want to create an area that's going to be slightly shorter around the bridge of the nose, working into the actual length here, where these layers will slightly overlap it as well. Now, I've just taken a diagonal section to start off with, and now I'm going to work an irregular section to that diagonal, and then isolate that area out of the way.
So I'm just pointing with lots and lots of control into the shape, probably like the last kind of inch of the hair, straight down into the hair. And really what I'm doing is I'm looking at the hair visually, and based on, going back to what James was saying about visualization, so based on what we visualized from the start, that's kind of directing really where my attention is around the edges of the hair. But I think what's important is that you don't destroy and remove the technique that you've applied to the hair first.
And you can see now when the two areas are divided, if I just slowly get to tilt the head slightly forward, how it's just kind of working forward at the very front of the top of the head, back to the rounding, and then working towards the back of the ear. And I'm going to repeat the same on this side now, whereas I'm going to layer it all first, so then I've got that kind of very textured, softer feel to it. And then I'll choose my exterior length as well from that.
Okay. So I think what we like at the moment is this idea that you do have the three separate lengths, but it's kind of hard to track how they've kind of been worked together, which I think that's nice. So going into the back, I think we should keep a similar sentiment, whereby it would probably be better in this instance to layer the hair through from the underneath. Again, so you have that kind of hidden value in the shape of the cut.
Okay, so I just want to kind of demonstrate now, just showing you the disconnection through the front area. So I'm just going to lift the panel out, and you can see initially, so you've got that kind of length that kind of just drops down near the bridge of the nose, which is layered from here. And then you've got that layered length that comes from the occipital bone that pivots all the way into the surface, which overlaps it as well. So when I kind of get a bit of texture and a little bit of looseness to it, it just kind of lends itself to that really kind of soft, kind of textural feeling to the haircut.
Okay, so this is the last area of the shape here. So if anything, it's just like a band that runs over the crown. And I think you've got a choice really in this area here whether you're going to bring it back or not. But I think in this instance, it'd be nice to just bring it straight up. So it just adjusts that corner.
Okay, so this is the finished look on Emily. You can see quite a nice mid-length shape that's got a little bit of invisible layering on the underneath, and then it's left with this very kind of irregular dividing point through the very front of the fringe, kind of a layered, rounded shape, and then this overlapping layered area that's pivoted from the occipital bone to the front, just to kind of promote a little bit of movement and a bit more texture towards the haircut.
Okay, so this is the finished look on Ada's hair. Hope you like it. It's a very unstructured overall shape, giving you a length that just brushes the shoulders. Layered, rounded shape through the front. And then you've just got very casual kind of wash and wear hair that just kind of shapes the rest of the cut. I hope you like it. Thank you very much.
So what I've done on Ada's hair color-wise, I have pre-lightened her hair, and the idea was to create a very light cream blonde. So we pre-lightened the hair and then work with a very, very neutral tone, transparent hue. And then I think what's quite nice, quite interesting on Ada's hair and hair texture, working with Daniel's haircut, is that we looked at the elements from the previous color and looked at what we think that could work really well with the new look. So we kept some darker areas and worked in a freehand manner just to recycle elements of the old color and add texture into the hair in this soft, cool brown. And I just think it works really nice with the movement of their hair.
So here with Emily, you can see what we've done is created this kind of 5 sections in, alternating 3 different tones of copper. So you've got this kind of very soft, peachy tone running through the hair. You can see the stronger copper peeking through the sides. The darkness of the deeper but muted copper all around the hairline, and it just gives this fun kind of texture and movement that is a soft, muted copper tone.